Was it difficult for you when you first moved to Colombia? What did you have to overcome, I guess, to stay there for 6.5 years?
Yeah, I think it was difficult in a lot of different ways. I think one, immigrating is difficult for anyone, right? You're leaving your family, your friends, everything you're leaving it behind. I was very privileged as an immigrant, right? I came into Colombia with a job, with my significant other. So I definitely had it easier than most immigrants. But regardless, going to a new place where they're speaking a different language, right? That's the first hurdle. And yes, I spoke Spanish, but one thing is, speaking a few hours a day with your partner. And then the other thing is speaking it all day, every day. I remember the first few weeks I would come home from work just exhausted. I'd be exhausted every minute, every hour, every day because I was constantly having to think double, right? I couldn't really turn off and go on autopilot in any moment, right? So I remember just being physically very tired. And then second, cultural norms, in the US, a lot of business is very straightforward. Your meeting's at 10, you're showing up at 10 a.m., right? You're turning on the camera, you're saying hi. How was your weekend? Good, perfect. So in this meeting, we're going to talk about XYZ. It's right to it. In Colombia, I would show up a meeting at 10 and, go to a conference room. The people in there are still finishing up their meeting. 10:15, we'd start going in, have small talk for 20 minutes, and then dive into the business, right? And I had this urge being like, no, we're here to work for business, right? Where in Colombia, it's very much like, how am I going to do business with you if I don't know you, if you don't have a connection, right? It's a different way of doing things. And that took me a while to get used to, because to build that relationship, which is so important, you need that mutual understanding, right? What we're talking about, building that connection. And I didn't have the criteria to build that connection yet. So it took me a while to get actually comfortable enough to work well, right? To be able to connect with clients, to be able to do what I needed to do. And then also to have the confidence to navigate daily life. I was living in, my wife and I rented an apartment, right? And there was a leak, right? The shower head started leaking. Okay, cool. If that happens in the US, I just call my landlord and say, hey, change this, right? Now you do this in Spanish with someone where I don't really know the power dynamic. I don't really know culturally what's accepted, what's not, right? I don't know if that's a fix that I'm supposed to do myself, because Colombians are much more handy than Americans, right? They're very good at fixing things in general. I don't know if I'm supposed to fix that, if she's supposed to fix it. I don't know if I need to contact the plumber to do it, or she's going to contact the plumber. If I contact the plumber, what's the right price? Do I then pay it and then pay her? Like, there's so much random small things that each thing individually is very small, but then it added up. It becomes, a lot to deal with. Once again, I was very, very lucky that I was there with my wife, right? We weren't married at the time, but we were living together, and she was incredibly supportive. And I think if I'd gone there by myself, it would have been a very different experience. I would have been very lost very quickly. So while it was difficult, I did have a very much, I had an advantage in the sense I had someone who could help me with a lot of it.
Yeah, the little things, they build up. They definitely do. The things that you take for granted. And honestly, I think there was probably a universally accepted definition of what culture is. I always think of it as the thing that everybody gets, but no one has to explain.
For sure.
And so in Colombia, the tap's leaking or whatever, it's understood how that's going to happen, or how we start a meeting. It's understood. No one has to say, this is how we start a meeting. People just get it. But for you and I, we don't get it, right? We have to learn that. And if no one's explaining it, you have to learn it in context and get a lot of reps in. But it is exhausting, and it does take a toll. I think the heaviest thing for me was always feeling like I was 2 steps behind everybody else.
Yeah. You were playing catch up.
I was playing catch up all the time. I felt like I kind of felt like I was like the dumbest person in the room a lot of the time. Like, people had to explain things to me that I didn't get. I'm laughing at a joke 20 seconds after everyone else is, trying to think about like, oh, what does that mean? And that got hard. And I think that, like, I was there for 9 months, but I think it takes a lot longer than that to fully assimilate. Because even at the end of the 9 months, I didn't feel like that was fully resolved. Like, oh, well, I'm caught up now. I might have been 1 step behind instead of 2, but I was definitely still behind. How long would you say it took you to fully feel comfortable? Or like, did you reach that point where you felt like, you weren't, little things weren't stacking up and weighing you down?
I feel like it definitely got easier, but I don't think I ever got to the point where I'm like, all right, this is my culture now, right? I still very much felt like, all right, I am very close to, I'm not very adjacent to this culture, but I'm still not a part of it yet, you know? I don't know if I would ever have actually fully got in it. And I think that's fine, right? That's something that happens. I do think a turning point was 3 years into our time there. We were in Bogota. Pandemic is there, so we're still, locked up, but then starting to move around a little bit. A buddy who had worked at the same company, he was working at a different company in Medellin, and he was leaving. And he reached out to me and said, hey, this role is opening up. You'd be a great fit. Leave the company you're at now and, come to this company, move to Medellin and start there. And I remember thinking, like, can I do that? Like, this company, the company I was at brought me to Colombia. They're sponsoring my work visa. Like, do I really want to jump ship and go to this other company? It was definitely, a huge improvement, not speaking bad of where I was at, but just, it was a career opportunity. But I'd be in a new city, the friendships that I worked so hard to create in the last 3 years, I'm going to be in a different city, have to start again. Is that really worth it? Right. And I feel like if I hadn't felt comfortable enough in the culture, I wouldn't have done it. Right. My wife and I would have just stayed in Bogota and maybe come right back to the US and been fine. But we felt comfortable enough where we'd be like, we can do this. Like we can absolutely do this. This is a great career move. We can check out a new city. And we had that level of comfort that allowed us to take that leap. So that's why I would say that was kind of the moment where I felt like, you know what, I know how to navigate the world here, right? Maybe not fully 100%, in the culture. And, I'm not Colombian. I never will be Colombian. But I was comfortable enough. And I think that I had been accepted enough, right, where I could make those types of moves.